You're completely useless. You're fired. My supervisor, Max, looked down at me with a nasty grin and said that. I understand. Well then, goodbye. I expressed my intention to quit and left the room, just as he wanted. Max didn't know that I was one of only 5 people in the US who held a particular certification, and he would regret this soon. After all, he just let go of a valuable asset. Moreover, I quickly moved to a rival company next door, and soon after, our positions would be completely reversed. My name is Sean Oliver, a 43-year-old single man. I've always dreamed of having a warm family, but being a workaholic, I haven't been fortunate in finding a partner. I moved to New York for college from a rural area, gained various experiences, and now work diligently at a medical device manufacturer in the city. Since the company operates nationwide, I could work in a different location if I wished, but I plan to consider that when my parents get older. For now, I want to grow in the city as much as possible while facing the various challenges. The company I work for values its employees and customers, believing that employees who do meticulous work create a better customer experience. Therefore, the company promotes a work environment with minimal overtime and easy access to time off, allowing employees to work without stress. The benefits are excellent, making it a very comfortable place to work. Mr. Todd, our CEO, expanded the company nationwide because he focuses on such aspects. The company welcomes talented individuals regardless of their academic background or nationality and actively interviews those looking to change jobs. With a diverse workforce, there is plenty of interaction, and the open environment means many people stay for a long time. However, my supervisor Max values academic achievement highly and considers anyone who can't perform well to be useless. I was assigned to Max this year due to a personnel transfer and have become his target, enduring daily sarcasm. Hey, didn't I tell you to print this? This is why high school graduates are so troublesome. What? I was on leave yesterday and had no memory of receiving such instructions. For some reason, Max thinks I'm a high school graduate and enjoys making petty annoyances towards me. Though the damage hasn't been significant and I can usually brush it off, the stress is accumulating, making me feel physically heavy. I usually go home on time every day and value my time after work, but since being assigned to Max, I've been forced to work overtime, intruding on my private time. The work at the medical device manufacturer is varied, with some employees going on sales calls, others receiving inquiries from patients, and some working with doctors to develop new medical devices. I was assigned to the department that collaborates with doctors on medical device development. So I understood that some overtime was inevitable due to the nature of the work. However, I couldn't accept the overtime caused by Max dumping his miscellaneous tasks on me. Still, I remained passionate about my work. As the weather gets colder, more people tend to fall ill, and infectious diseases become prevalent, making it a busy season for the medical industry. One day, after finishing a meeting with a doctor, Max called me over. Here comes the usual sarcasm time. With heavy steps, I approached Max's desk. You know, you're being too familiar with the doctors. It's disrespectful. Don't get too cocky. No, that's not my intention. I tried to refute the baseless accusation, but a headache struck at that moment. My body signaled me to stop, so I looked down without arguing. What, are you talking back? Remember, Mr. Todd is doing his monthly rounds next week. If he hears your cheeky tone, I'll be the one getting reprimanded. Indeed, as Max said, Mr. Todd would be making his rounds next week. It's a monthly visit to see the employees' faces, born out of his genuine concern for his staff, but Max calls it an inspection. Whenever Mr. Todd's visit is announced, Max tells his subordinates to tidy up their desks, acting only to avoid getting scolded. At its worst, he would tell us to clean up the very documents he had dumped on us, leading to overtime. I've heard stories of several people quitting due to Max's harassment, and as I'm gradually being pushed to my limits, I understand how they felt. Just as I was contemplating how to respond, Sarah from the accounting department awkwardly approached. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Todd is coming tomorrow, so I need to report this invoice, but it lacks details. Max shot me a glance and indicated with his chin that I should handle it immediately. Feeling sorry for Sarah, who had nothing to do with the issue between Max and me, I told her I would bring the necessary documents to the accounting department later. Though irritated by Max's attitude, I started looking for the documents related to the invoice in Sarah's hands. As a certified public accountant, I generally know which documents are needed and what auditors look for. Thus, I'm often called to the accounting department, but Max, unaware of this, complains every time I leave my desk. Well, this time Sarah went out to see me so he would not complain. But I was dismayed that he could not answer the question on the spot even though it was his bill. I apologize for the missing attachment. When I brought the missing documents to the accounting department, Sarah looked concerned and seemed worried about Max's earlier behavior. He was really harsh with you. Are you okay? I'm fine, it's just the usual. I said this and left. When I returned to my desk, I found a mountain of paperwork waiting for me, making me sigh. It was the monthly paperwork sorting routine. I was almost impressed by how Max managed to accumulate so much paperwork in just a month. It seemed my lack of complaints and silent work irritated Max, as he made a point of coming over to make snide remarks. Hey, here's some work for the incompetent. Also, I'll be attending the meeting with the doctor tomorrow. Your overly familiar attitude must have upset them. I felt a wave of panic hearing those words. No, it's unusual to change the person in charge suddenly, and the content is quite specialized, so I should go. What? If it's specialized, then it's even worse for you to go. It's terrifying to think that someone as incompetent as you is developing medical devices. Knowing that Max's interference would only cause trouble for the doctor, I tried to argue but was immediately shut down. As a result, the development project that had been progressing smoothly encountered difficulties after Max attended the meeting the next day. Didn't I tell you? Without specialized knowledge, the project won't move forward. I was furious and confronted Max. What? It would have been the same result with you, don't act all high and mighty. You're lucky. Doctors are so stubborn. This project is over. My blood pressure rose at Max's words. The medical device we were developing was highly anticipated by many patients. Knowing this, I was infuriated by his reckless actions. I left the office to apologize to the doctor. Hey, where are you going during work hours? Max shouted something, but I ignored him. I hurried to the hospital where Dr. Casey Miller worked. I was determined to reschedule today's meeting. Hey, there you are, you incompetent. Seeing my face, Casey greeted me with those words. Come on, that's not fair. Max must have said something, right? Yeah, he boasted that he was taking over the project from you. I bowed my head to Casey, who was my college classmate. I was assigned to this project because of my medical background and license, but Max, knowing nothing about it, had taken over and messed things up. Though Casey wasn't particularly angry, he said that as long as Max was involved, the project wouldn't progress, and we might have to halt it. I promised to negotiate with Max to get back on the project and parted ways with Casey. Since I was at the hospital, I decided to do some sales work and headed to the nurse station. Casey often provided feedback on useful items for the medical field, and I appreciated hearing the nurses' opinions as well. Although it was usually just a brief chat due to their busy schedules, the feedback sometimes led to new products or improvements. To my surprise, I ran into Sarah at the nurse station. Oh, Sean, are you unwell? She asked with a worried expression. No, I'm perfectly healthy. Hearing this, Sarah looked relieved. So, why are you here? Sarah explained that her brother was hospitalized here with a gastrointestinal illness. Her brother had also been a subordinate of Max and had suffered under his harassment, eventually falling ill. Please be careful with him. I don't want you to end up like my brother, enduring until you break down. Sarah's sad smile squeezed my heart. I couldn't believe there was a victim so close to me. I trembled with anger that had nowhere to go. When I returned to the office, Max approached my desk. Why did you go to the hospital? I got approval to rejoin the project. This project doesn't belong to you, it's a team effort. As I calmly started my work, Max seemed irritated. That day, he dumped even more miscellaneous tasks on me than usual, and I was utterly exhausted. The day Mr. Todd came for his greeting visit, I'd finally fallen sick and had to take a day off. After getting an IV and resting over the weekend, I recovered and returned to work on Monday, but it turned out to be a bad day to be absent. Hey, What's the point of coming in now? You weren't here when it mattered yesterday. Max yelled at me as soon as I arrived. Do you think this job is a joke? I apologize for not managing my health properly, but I don't take this job lightly. I usually decide to ignore most of what he says, but when it could cause misunderstandings with others, I can't help but respond. This only makes Max more heated. What? Do you even know what day it was when you were absent? You embarrassed me. Apparently, Mr. Todd had pointed out my absence, emphasizing that it's a supervisor's role to minimize overtime. At that moment, Mr. Todd appeared. Sean, I heard you were out last week. Are you all right? He was at the head office for an audit and took the time to check on my health. Max's attitude changed instantly from the domineering tone he had used earlier. Mr. Todd, he's fine now. It's really a problem when employees can't manage themselves. Plus, he's overly familiar with the doctors on the medical device project. Though I had many things I wanted to say, I held back in front of Mr. Todd. Mr. Todd listened silently, which Max took as a cue to continue criticizing my behavior. Just then, Casey appeared. Excuse me, we have a meeting now, he said, allowing me to leave the scene. You took me off the project. Max tried to stop me, but Casey handed me the meeting documents, letting me proceed. Are you really okay? It's tough working under him, Casey said, concerned. Honestly, I wasn't okay, but having people who cared and listened gave me the strength to keep going. A few days later, an incident occurred. No matter which file I checked, all data related to the medical device development was missing. All the paper documents were gone too. Max approached me with a smirk as I frantically searched. Oh? You seem to be in a hurry. Is something wrong? Everyone present knew it was Max's doing. You messed up again on the day Mr. Todd visited. Did you erase all the project files? Max feigned ignorance but suggested it was my fault. Mr. Todd had a bad impression, which made him the prime suspect. What? You lost all the medical device development data? That's a serious problem. How are you going to take responsibility? There's only one way out. I was exhausted from Max's daily harassment. As I silently stared at the floor, Max continued. You'll need to apologize to the doctor, saying you accidentally deleted all the data. I knew it was partly my fault for not having backups, and as Max said, this incident was my responsibility. I thought of talking to Casey, hoping he might have some paper documents to help recreate the data. While I was lost in thought, Max, frustrated by my silence, slammed his hand on my desk and declared, You're completely useless. You're fired. Max looked down at me with a nasty grin as he said that. At that moment, something snapped inside me. I understand. Well then, goodbye. I slammed the resignation letter I had prepared earlier onto the desk, expressing my intention to quit just as Max wanted, and left the office. You've tarnished my reputation until the very end. Resigning of your own accord will make finding a new job tough. Well, good luck with that. Ignoring his parting words, I left the department, only to find Sarah standing around the corner. It seemed she had something to ask about accounting again. She must have seen everything that just happened. Feeling embarrassed, I couldn't look her in the eye. Sean, are you okay? I felt like I was always making Sarah worry. I'm fine. I'm leaving this job now. The stress will be gone too. Let me handle the task you came to ask about, and that'll be my last. Why does someone like you, who works so hard, have to quit? Why doesn't Max pay a price? Sarah looked like she was about to cry. But I knew for sure that he would pay a price soon. I had that conviction. Besides, despite suddenly leaving my job, I already had another opportunity lined up, so I felt no regret or anxiety. With qualifications as a doctor, lawyer, CPA, and social worker, I am one of only about 5 people in the US who hold all these certifications. I use my medical knowledge to develop new medical devices and my legal expertise when necessary. As a social worker, I also directly consult with patients and introduce them to various systems and services. It's unfortunate that Max only sees me as just another office worker. I was hired because of these qualifications and have handled a variety of tasks. I've even received direct requests and consultations from Mr. Todd. With my resignation, the company would incur additional costs for hiring and consulting, which was clearly evident. The poor impression Mr. Todd would have of Max didn't concern me anymore. But Sarah, unaware of this, continued to worry about me. I handed Sarah my business card from the new company, telling her to reach out if she needed anything. I then immediately joined the neighboring rival company. Casey later told me that the medical device development at my former company was scrapped. So, I'm counting on you from now on. Yeah, leave it to me. At the new company, I resumed working on medical device development, forming a new project team and starting afresh. I was recruited by Mr. Simon, Casey's father, after he learned about my situation. Being a rival company, I was quickly given a position where I could be an immediate asset. Casey found it more flexible and easier to proceed working on the project with his father's company, and things progressed smoothly. A year after joining, the medical device we developed was released. When bedridden elderly patients are left unattended for long periods, they can develop bed sores. To prevent this, caregivers must reposition them or place cushions every few hours. However, this can be a significant burden for caregivers in hospitals and elderly care facilities that manage many patients. So, we focused our research on how to reduce the burden on caregivers while ensuring that patients could prevent bed sores without additional stress. We developed a device that supports turning the patient every few hours. If the cost is too high, it won't sell and won't reach those who need it. The challenge was to make the device affordable while maintaining safety, and after a year of development, it received positive feedback. Mr. Simon was pleased and encouraged us to continue our work for the benefit of society. Then, unexpectedly, my phone rang, displaying Max's name. Though hesitant, I answered, knowing he might come to my office if I didn't. "What the hell did you do?" Max sounded panicked, and I knew why. "Long time no see. Is something wrong?" Amused by his distress, I pretended not to know. "Of course something's wrong. I launched the medical device you were working on. And now we're getting swamped with complaints and lawsuits for patent infringement." 6 months after I left, Max had launched the device using my stolen data. But it was still in development, with safety issues unaddressed. The release led to malfunctions, complaints, and lawsuits from injured users, leaving Max in a panic. Actually, it was my company that sued for patent infringement. Unable to hold back my laughter any longer, I explained the truth to Max. "So, you were the one who stole the data from my computer. It's only fitting that a thief pays a price. It's terrifying that someone without any qualifications like you tried to develop medical devices. You may not have known, but I hold qualifications as a doctor, lawyer, social worker, and CPA." When I told him that I was one of only 5 people in the US with such qualifications, Max was left speechless. "I have experience as a doctor, and I've gradually worked my way through various fields to get to where I am now. But I guess, in your eyes, I'm still incompetent. Does Mr. Todd know about this?" he said in a low voice. Even now, he was still concerned about Mr. Todd's opinion. I was beyond exasperated. Of course he knows. He hired me because of my qualifications. Come back. That's an order from your supervisor. Even after a year since I left, he still thought of me as his subordinate. He was so panicked that he hung up abruptly, but I decided to ignore it. The next day, Max stormed into my new company. "What do you mean by ignoring my orders? You've tarnished my reputation. Get back and clean up this mess immediately." Max's shouting drew curious looks from my colleagues. "Excuse me, I'm no longer your subordinate. If you continue to make a scene, I'll call the police." I pointed to the exit, urging him to leave, but Max showed no sign of backing down. Just then, Mr. Todd from my previous job appeared. "Stop embarrassing yourself. Quiet down." Seeing Mr. Todd, Max turned pale and began to tremble. My apologies for the trouble Max has caused. "Sean, I'm sorry I couldn't help you when he was pressuring you." Mr. Todd continuously apologized. "No, you don't need to apologize. I wasn't facing any issues now, and I was doing the work I loved, so there was no need for concern. I just wanted Max taken away from here as quickly as possible." Then Mr. Todd said something unexpected. "Sean, or rather, President Oliver, I hope you can look after our company from now on." Everyone, including myself, Max, and the other employees, were stunned. "What do you mean?" "Ugh, you beat Dad. He always takes too long to say things." Casey, who had heard about the commotion from the employees, had come over. I still couldn't understand the situation. When I asked for an explanation, Casey started to reveal the truth. When the medical device we developed began to gain traction, Mr. Todd felt a sense of crisis. The employees didn't know, but the company's performance had started to decline. In a difficult decision, Mr. Todd had asked Casey's father to buy the company. Since Mr. Todd and Mr. Simon were classmates, they had a frank discussion, leading to the acquisition. However, Casey, being on the path to becoming a doctor, couldn't take over the company. Mr. Todd was looking at retiring because of his age, and Casey suggested that I become president, and as part of that process, they decided to proceed with the talks, including a takeover, but apparently this happened before they could get my approval. I was frozen, not being able to follow the conversation, but after hearing Casey's explanation, I was able to understand what was going on. I needed some time to decide on becoming president, but it seemed there was no time for hesitation. I turned to the now pale-faced Max and said, "So, from now on, that means you're my subordinate, Max." Max was dejected at the unexpected reversal of roles. The employees burst into cheers and applause. Soon after, I began working on the company acquisition. Ironically, I ended up cleaning up the mess Max had made, but since it was now my company, it couldn't be helped. We provided the medical device Casey and I had developed to those who had bought Max's defective product for free. And we covered the medical expenses for the injured users. However, we decided not to withdraw the lawsuit for patent infringement. "Wait, Mr. Oliver. Why won't you drop the lawsuit?" Upon consulting Mr. Todd, we found that Max had independently sold the medical device without the company's consent. This was problematic for the company, and we felt he needed to take responsibility. Max, who thought all the problems would be solved once the companies merged, was in a state of panic once again. It turns out Max was also being sued by Sarah's brother, who was demanding compensation, leaving him completely overwhelmed. Ultimately, someone who was being sued couldn't continue working, and Max, who had been absent without permission, was dismissed according to company regulations. What happens to him next is none of my concern. As for me, despite the unfamiliar role as president, I continued to visit Casey's hospital. "You really managed to come often despite being so busy." Thankfully, I built good relationships with the nurses, who now offer more feedback and seek my advice more than ever. Besides, there's another reason I visit the hospital. "Sean, my brother is ready now." Sarah had quickly contacted me using the business card I gave her, and we've been in touch ever since. As I helped her with company matters, we grew closer and soon started dating. She introduced me to her brother, who was hospitalized at Casey's hospital, and we visited him together. Now, after a long hospital stay, her brother is finally being discharged. It turns out he holds the same rare qualifications as I do, one of only 5 people in the US. Because of this, I quickly scouted him to join the company, and he will start working with us gradually. I was able to ease Sarah's long-held worries. Sarah will also join me as my secretary, and together, we will work to strengthen the company. I vowed never to let anyone worry or allow people to leave due to poor relationships. From now on, I am determined to protect Sarah and the company employees.